Is there anything that can make this Phillies season watchable? We'll dive into that. I'm interested, Eichhoff supposedly pitching tonight. He's 0-4. He was the guy that we were kind of counting on to take a big step this year. Why is he not taking that step? We'll get into that and some more Phillies with Ricky Bottalico, Comcast Sportsnet Philadelphia. He did the post game yesterday, which I had to imagine, Ricky, was not fun.
No, it wasn't fun. Anytime they lose, it's usually not on the top of my list to do. But, I guess if you want to take the positive, I heard you just say Aaron Nola. Yeah, he had a nice little start yesterday. But you're absolutely 100% on top of it when you say both the offenses were anemic. Because it was kind of like, let's hurry up and try to get this in before the rains really come. And they really didn't. So it was a bad day to hit and a good day to pitch. That was it. I mean, there was nothing that went on in that game yesterday that was actually, head over heels doing backflips about. Absolutely not.
Yeah, now let's take the positive because Nola pitched well, and you could say maybe because the batters were contributing to that, but he did seem like he had some more oomph yesterday. He just seemed a lot more polished yesterday, which is a little odd from a guy who's been hurt and coming off the disabled list.
Yeah, he definitely was a little bit more polished. The one thing that I saw right off the bat is that he didn't throw many pitches even above the waist. And to me, that's what pitching's all about. You keep the ball down, you keep it at the knees. And the other thing is by seeing him as much as I've seen him, he didn't have as much movement on his fastball, but he had jump on it. What I mean by that is the velocity was up. It wasn't moving like a foot and a half. It was moving about 3 or 4 inches, and it was late. So I looked at that, and I said to myself, wow, I hope this is what we're going to get every time out because his fastball was lightning yesterday. I mean, up to 96 miles an hour. That's not exactly what you expected from him yesterday, that's for sure. And his curveball was right on. So oddly enough, it took a month and a half into the season, but we got Aaron Nola back.
So, Ricky, Mike's been asking the question, what is there to watch for the rest of the summer? Is Nola maybe one of those guys?
Nola is definitely a player of interest. I think Aaron Alper is a player of interest. And to really see what happens with Michael Franco. Those are all players of interest. I mean, there are things to watch. Come on, guys. It's still May. The Phillies haven't even hit a winning streak by any stretch of the imagination, and that's all it really takes. You hit one good winning streak, all of a sudden you're right back in things. So, I guess I'm putting my hat on that they have a winning streak, and I am laughing saying that.
I know you guys said they were at the quarter pole, 41 games in. Would you say that you've been disappointed by Eichhoff? Now, he's a guy I know that you've been high on, but he's 0-4 entering tonight.
Yeah, I'm not buying into his wins and losses, but, I mean, he had a couple really bad games where he really got off his mark and he wasn't throwing his fastball within the zone. He was kind of all over the place, and his last start against Texas was much better. So I'm bucking that he figured it out in the last couple weeks. So, I still think he's got the stuff to be a really good pitcher at the big league level, and a couple weeks is not going to turn me off of him. I like what the guy brings to the table. I like his intensity on the mound, and I like his thought process on the mound. So you put those three things together, he should be a pretty good pitcher in the long run.
Yeah, Ricky, yesterday Pete Mackanin said after the game, like, we got Nola, that threw well. We could build off of that. They obviously anticipate Eichhoff to turn some things around. He mentioned Eflin. He seems like he thinks that the pitchers are kind of ready to take another step forward here and that maybe they can kind of get behind the pitching staff here as we get into June.
I think they have to. I mean, when you really look at what happened early on in the season, the starting pitchers have been pretty much non-existent. I mean, you had a couple good starts from Eichhoff, a couple good starts from Helix, and besides that, it's been like torture, and you can't continue to play like that.
Yeah, it's we were talking a little earlier. Somebody mentioned, we're talking about with the Sixers, who have not been very good, but they've got some guys you can sink your teeth into, and that's why there is some excitement. With the Phillies, do you see guys somewhere that you can sink your teeth into and kind of grab onto as, the next couple of years as these are going to be the guys? Because I feel like that people are looking around this team waiting and wondering when's the next kind of, shift of this franchise.
Well, it's so much harder in baseball. I mean, I guess in the NBA, like you were just talking to Sixers, they get draft picks and then they're basically on the big league team, or the 76ers. But I mean, when you look at baseball, there's so much development that has to happen. That's why when you think of the baseball draft, nobody gets excited, because you never know what you're actually getting. And it's tough. It's tough picking. I mean, how many times does a Bryce Harper come along? Not very often. And we haven't seen that with the Phillies, that's for sure. But I think the thing that people get overly excited about, overly upset about, is that they look around to other teams and they say, well, this guy was brought up by the Yankees. Look at Judge. Look what Judge is doing for the Yankees. Look what Sanchez is doing for the Yankees. Look what Trout. Look what, and they don't see that with the Phillies. They don't see a superstar yet with the Phillies. And I think that's the biggest thing that's bothersome. Where do we look right now? I think you look at the Lehigh Valley Iron Pigs.
Yeah, Judge is one, Conforto's another. Ricky Bottalico, our guest. Ricky, Mike brought up all the blown saves and the mess that has been the bullpen. Do you look back at the Ken Giles deal at all and wonder if maybe they should have kept that guy?
You know what, though? I mean, he wasn't. They weren't in a situation to really utilize a closer. I mean, obviously every team needs one, and I think their train of thought is, you know what, when we need a closer and we definitely need that sure put-away guy in the ninth inning, we'll go get him. But they're telling everybody right now that it's not a necessity for this team. And now I think I know where you're going. Vince Velasquez should be the closer after his blow-up. But, just think about this for a second. Let's say you did move Vince Velasquez from the starter role to the closer's role, how much work is he really going to get this year? That's the question mark. There's red flags everywhere for changing things, which is why right now what we see, like the Phillies needed another pitcher this past weekend, and they go and bring up Adam Morgan. And I think people are like, why Adam Morgan? Because there's nobody else that they want to bring up that's seasoned. They want the guys that are on the 40-man roster, most of the guys, they want them to be extremely seasoned before they get to the major league level. And that's what you're seeing right now is a little bit of a stalemate, and I don't think the fans like that very much.
Yeah, it seems that this is really the first kind of feeling that the fans are kind of looking around going, hey, because here's the one interesting part for me, Ricky, is a couple of years ago, I guess maybe 10 years ago now, we used to hear Jason Donald and Lou Marson and Carlos, those guys' names came up as if they were like untouchable pieces. And really, Carrasco's the only guy that's ever really made it. And there were some other names that were in the Philly system that you always heard about, but they're the three off the top of my head.
Tom Brown.
Yeah, and I think there's some trepidation of we're hearing so much about these guys, but you're never going to them. Should we be concerned?
I think there's, like I just said, I think there is always a concern because of the if factor. If this guy does this in AAA and he gets up to the big leagues, if he does something differently in his swing, he's going to be better. There's too many ifs in baseball. And these guys, you can't judge heart. You can't judge anything until they're at actually the big league level. You can go down, tear up AAA, and be that player that they call the 4A guy that's not quite ready for the big leagues and can't seem to figure it out when he gets up here. So, yeah, there should definitely be concern because I think right now what we're looking at is, okay, you have all these prospects. How many of them are actually good enough to be impactful at the big league level? And I think it's going to be a little bit less than what we first suspected.
Yeah. Well, you get those guys like Hoskins and Cousins who kind of had been flying under the radar for a while, and then all of a sudden last year they burst onto the scene, and now it's like people are like, hey, let's see these guys up here, and you wonder if these guys are really as good as they've been going down there. There's got to be a reason why the Phillies are kind of hitting the brakes on some of these guys.
Well, I think they're hitting the brakes on those two guys because of a guy named Darren Ruff. If you remember back in Double-A, he tore it up. All of a sudden, the Phillies kind of moved him up to the big league level, and it wasn't the same guy you got in Double-A. So I think, because of that, that's exactly what you have right now is we're not rushing anybody. We'll take the losses at the big league level right now to make sure these guys are ready in July or August.
We're talking with Ricky Bottalico, Comcast Sportsnet Philadelphia. Of course, Phillies pre- and post-game live. 2-7 on that 9-game road trip. They'll come back home, supposed to take on the Rockies tonight. You mentioned Velasquez real quick. He said, I'm clueless right now. I'm running around like a chicken without his head. He kind of indicated, too, that maybe the bullpen would be okay for me. I know that that's a lot of people's quick judgment is, why don't they put him in the bullpen? How many chances? But when you hear him start to say things like that, like I'm clueless and stuff, do you wonder if maybe maybe not a change of scenery in terms of organization, but just having him sit out in the bullpen would be a better opportunity for him?
Last week I probably would have said no. But when a player comes out and said he's clueless and he has no idea what he's doing, yeah, I think that tells you a lot about what's going on, and it questions what are the teachings going into his ears right now. And you know what? If I was to talk to Vince, I would say, look, there's certain things you could say, but that wasn't one of them. You don't want to tell people that you're clueless, because then you're going to get a label as being a guy who's got a $1 million arm with a 2-cent head. That's not what you want. You want a guy out, that has some kind of an idea as to what's going on when he steps on the hill.
Like Mike said, Ricky Bottalico is with us as we're talking Phillies baseball, and the lineup's out for tonight, Ricky, and I see Michael Saunders penciled in that 8th spot. Why is he even in the lineup? Would you rather see those ABs go to a guy like Nick Williams?
Well, I think, number one, let's just be a little patient, because I have a weird feeling that it's going to happen. You thought Michael Saunders was going to be a home run guy, and he was going to be able to drive in some runs, and he hasn't done that for the Phillies. When you look back to last year, he had a good half season, and then his second half of the season he kind of went downhill, and he's now. So I'm on the side of just being a little bit patient right now. I hope by the trade deadline.
We're talking with Ricky Bottalico. We got a little bit of a phone problem with the phone right there, so we'll try to put him on hold real fast. By the way, Saunders 0 for 4, hit cleanup yesterday.
The key word he said there is be patient. I think it's going to happen.
Yeah, that was
that's
something
pretty
that's
telling
kind of
right
like,
there.
Hey guys, maybe something's coming up the pipeline here. 232 he's hitting in 40 games this season. But what we did hear Ricky say was he's right. Saunders had a hot start. In fact, he made the All-Star game last year. Then after that, he kind of went down the hill. I do want to ask Ricky one thing. We're kind of bouncing around with some hitters here, but I do want to get your thoughts on what you saw from Nick Pivetta. And there's a lot of starting pitchers in this rotation. If you think, because the Phillies 40-man and organization seems to be devoid of any bullpen arms. Do you think Pivetta has the kind of makeup and stuff to be a guy who can pitch in that bullpen?
I think Pivetta is more of a starter. I really do. I think he's going to be okay once he just got his feet wet. He's going to be able to make some starts at the big league level pretty soon, and I think he's the one guy. He's the injury guy right now. I think if one of the starting rotation guys gets injured, he's going to be the one coming up to the big leagues. I think it's a drastic move to start shelling everybody into the bullpen right now. It is what it is. We're going to have to live with it. Hopefully the starters start picking up some of the slack and go deeper into the games. That's it.
What's your take? Altair's struggling a little bit. Is this the classic case? I mean, I'm sure when you were, pitching and a guy comes in, he's hot, you start to see a little bit more film of those guys, and you watch the video and find out things. So are teams watching more video? Because you go from number 6 in the order to number 3 in the order. That 3-hole puts you on a different pedestal, right?
Yeah, I will tell you this much. I like what I've seen from Altair this year. I just think he's in a little bit of a slump. A typical thing yesterday when a guy gets into a slump, he's a little slow. He wasn't catching up to fastballs yesterday, which tells me he'll break out of it at some point. Maybe not seeing the ball as well as he had been earlier on. But, I mean, this is where you learn what kind of a hitter is, what kind of a big leaguer he's going to be, because he's got to work himself out of this slump as quickly as possible. And that's where we're going to learn some things about Aaron Altair.
Ricky, you talk about slumps. What's happened to Odubel Herrera? I mean, the guy was an all-star in 2016. Can you label him as anything but a disappointment for the Phillies in 2017 so far?
So far, he has been a disappointment. I think the thing that even goes, even more under the microscope, not running out plays, not running out ground balls, didn't run out that weak little bunt swing he had yesterday.
Yeah.
You know, people get ticked off at that, and I think that's going to be more magnified than anything else. He's not hitting the pitches that he should hit. He's getting mistake pitches over the plate, and he's not putting them in play, and that's a big problem. And last year when you looked at him, he would hit some balls out of the ballpark that were almost hitting him. He's not hitting those pitches anymore either. So back to the drawing board is what I would tell Odubel.
All right, about quarter pole through the season here, 41 games, really struggling over the last month here, the Phillies. What's your take over these first 41 games? Do you see a better play down the horizon in terms of the summer here, or do you think this team is going to kind of be putt-putting towards the finish line?
I would think they have to play better. Jobs are on the line at this point. You know, when you start off, you know, the patience starts to run a little thin within the organization, and that means jobs are on the line. So I got to. It's going to be, cha-chang. See you later. We'll bring somebody else in because, you know, you can't continue to play this poorly all season long. You're going to lose your fan base, and you know you're going to lose the respect of the guys on the ball club that are doing well.
All right, Ricky Bottalico, we'll see if they get to baseball in tonight up there at Citizens Bank Park. We got a lot of rain down this way. We'll see if the Phillies and the Rockies can get their 4-game set going.
Stay dry, Ricky.
Ricky Bottalico, Comcast
All right,
Sportsnet. Take care, pal.